So what is up everyone, Jay here with another Fire Emblem Heroes video, and today I'm going to be ranking the sword infantry units in Fire Emblem Heroes. So yeah, I wanted to make this video for a long time for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a sword infantry enthusiast, as you guys know. I have every single +10, every single Marth at +10, so I have a lot of experience and knowledge with sword infantries. So yeah, and also because, you know, Choose Your Legends 6 just happened, and thankfully none of the units there are sword infantry units, so there's no competition for my boy Brave Marth, which is nice. So yeah, I thought I'd just make this video, so hopefully by the time I release this, there isn't some new shiny top tier sortie, because, you know, historically in Fire Emblem Heroes, the sword infantry class is pretty much the most competitive class type in the game, because there's so many damn swords in general, but especially sword infantries, there's so many of them. So yeah, so that's why I wanted to make the video. So a couple things. So how I made this tier list, you guys can make your own tier list and just use mine if you want. I'll leave this in the description if you want to make your own. But yeah, so I divided them within 4 tiers. So you have S plus tier, which are the best of the best. You have the S tier, which are pretty damn good, A tier, which are good, and then B, which are all right. And the characters that I chose, as you guys can see, I don't have every single sword infantry in the game here. So you know, it would be impossible to rank all of them because there's so many of them, and it would take hours upon end if I tried to do that. So I just chose the best ones in my opinion, and, you know, some of the most popular and notable ones. So that's the criteria I chose for these characters. So don't get mad at me if I don't have a character here that you invested in or you like. It's nothing personal. It's just I just chose the ones that I think are worthy to be on the list. So yeah, and that will just lead into what I was going to say before we start. Again, this is just my opinion, like I like to say with every single ranking video that I make. It's just my personal opinion, and of course I am a little biased towards Marth, but I'm going to try to look at these units objectively, of course, as units. And, you know, it's impossible in a game like Fire Emblem Heroes that has so many characters. It's impossible to quantify them and just squeeze it into one tier list, all the interactions within the game. It's just impossible. So I'm just going to do my best to try to talk about them in depth and rank them according to my opinion. So if you disagree, please don't flame me in the comments. You know, we can have some civil discussion if you don't agree. But that, you know, that's the fun part, is if you're talking with the right people, you can have interesting discussions on who's the best and, you know, who should be ranked higher or lower and whatnot. So yeah, let's begin the tier list. So I'm going to be starting with the S plus tier because I think those units are the most influential, obviously, and they're the strongest ones. So I'm going to be going in depth the most on them as units, and I'm going to go over them like with their weaknesses and stuff. So I'm going to be going in depth the most on S plus tier, and then after that I'll just be slotting in the rest of them, and I might talk about them a little bit, but not as in depth as the S plus tier unit. So yeah, let's begin. So I'm going to be starting with Brave Alm. So Brave Alm, Tank Buster Supreme. He's one of the best tank busters in the game, pretty much the best sword infantry tank buster in the game. He came out in 2019, so his stat spread is a little bit outdated. He has 42 HP, 38 attack, which is super boon, 35 speed, 37 defense, and 20 resistance. But even with his outdated stat spread, he still is incredibly strong because Draco Falchion gives him an easy plus $10 stats, Dragon Effectiveness, +1 movement at the start of turn, partial no follow-up, and wind sweep. So that weapon is one of the reasons why he's so good. And then he also comes with Sense Scale, his PRF A skill, which is the main reason why he hits like a truck, because it scales off his attack, giving him the true damage, and it just makes him one of the best tank busters in the game. And there's no one really in the sword infantry class type that can hit as hard as Alm. There's other units and other class types, like his legendary version now, and like legendary Seliph, that can hit really hard. But in the sword infantry class type, Brave Alm is pretty much unmatched when it comes to chunking units and just destroying them, because he is a player phase monster. Not only because he hits so hard, but also because he has the +1 movement, which makes him essentially a cavalier as an infantry unit. So that +1 movement's insane. And you know, the wind sweep on top of his you know, with Sense Scale is so good because it lets him safely poke units and just hit them and destroy them for free, because they can't counterattack. Most of them, like units like Brave Hector, he's never going to be fast enough to, you know, not get wind swept. And the wind sweep helps because, you know, Sense Scale does have that recoil, which can be annoying to some people, but you pretty much have to run Sense Scale on all, because that's like I said, it's the main reason why he hits so hard and why he's so good. So I've seen some people, you know, they've been tempted to try to give him this encounter. I'm like, no, don't try to make him into a god sword, you know, omni tank. He's a player phase monster, and that's what he is. That's how he should be, in my opinion. So he's a player phase destructive monster. And you know, the skills he can run Glimmer, of course, and other skills, but Gale Force is pretty much his best one. Vital Aster is also pretty good if he wants to have extra survivability, because he's not the best in the enemy phase. He can take some physical hits because he has 37 defense, but res department, he has really low res. And he can also run AoEs, you know, like Growing Wind or Blazing Wind if you set him up with like units like Asker or Infantry Pulse Support or like Valoria and stuff. So he can excel in that as well because he hits so hard. So those are some of his strengths pretty much. I pretty much covered the main strengths of his, just being an incredible tank buster. And then his weaknesses, you know, like I said, I did touch upon it a little bit. He has low res, so you know he's much weaker in the enemy phase compared to the other swords because he doesn't have no follow-up. It's only partial in the player phase, so you know he is pretty much stuck to that player phase role. So if you're looking for an omni tank, there's a lot of other sword inventories that can do that. So yeah, that's one of his weaknesses, I guess. And then I guess another weakness of his is sometimes he can't get fast enough to win sweep some of the fastest units in the game, like max invested Brave Marths or legendary Marths that have just so many stats. So sometimes he can't win sweep them, you know, unless you have a decent shot if you're like max invested. But if you're not max invested Brave Olm, you know, he can kind of struggle in the speed department because he only has 35 base speed. So yeah, that can be an issue. And then the other issue with the wind sweep effect is that it doesn't affect dragons, obviously. So he doesn't have water sweep, he has wind sweep. So even against dragons, even though he has the dragon effectiveness, he can still die to their counterattack because they can get so bulky, and a lot of the times they run dragon wall or have some kind of damage reduction. So, you know, the wind sweep's not going to help him against dragons like Ascended to Dune and stuff like that. So he can die still to them. So yeah, that's one of his weaknesses. But, you know, Brave Olm, like I said, even though those weaknesses are there, he is unmatched in the player phase department, pretty much in the sword infantry class. He has so many skill options because he's infantry. He can run speed defense tempo to deal with guard effects. He has low speed defense to maximize his speed, having his speed be faster. He has close call, which is good for summoner duels to help him retreat back to like a far safe tank or something. He can run Times Pulse in the sea, which is pretty much his best sea skill in my opinion because he doesn't have -1 cooldown, and he does want to trigger stuff like Gale Force and specials in general. Gale Force especially because he hits so damn hard, a lot of the time he doesn't even need a damaging special. So Gale Force is very good with his +1 movement, just letting him move again, of course. And then you can also run attack speed menace, but like I said, I think Times Pulse is his best C. And then Sacred Seal's Flashing Blade or like solos and stuff like that to help him get the charges. So yeah, that's an overview of Brave Olm, easily S tier. I don't think most people are going to disagree with that. He's just so good at tanking and not tanking, destroying tanks and just doing what he does best in the player phase. So yeah, that's Brave Olm. So next unit we're going to go over is my boy Brave Marth. Also, one more thing I forgot to mention is that the tiers, I'm not ranking them within the tier. So I'm not saying Brave Olm is better than Brave Marth. I'm just ranking them generally. They're kind of just being placed in here within the tier. I'm not ranking them within the tier. So just like to get that out of the way. So yeah, Brave Marth, my boy, the guy I campaigned for years, and he finally got his Brave Vault last year. And he has aged pretty damn well because people are starting to see, a lot more people are starting to see that he's a top tier unit. A lot of people wrote him off when he first came out because they were like, oh, he's just another sortie. But then you realize that his Genesis Falchion and Shining Emblem, they synergize so well together, and it has like 11 effects built into it. His weapon is absolutely cracked, and he has a stat spread, a godlike stat spread of 44 HP, 41 attack, and 43 speed with super boons in both of those, and 32 defense and 25 res, which 25 res doesn't seem that high, but he can get a lot of extra stats, so he can omni tank really, really well. And, you know, unlike Brave Olm, he's very versatile because he's not stuck to the player phase. He can excel in both. Obviously, he's not as good in the player phase as Brave Olm, but he's still really good in the player phase because he can function in both. You know, in the meta of save units, Brave Marth still can omni tank because, you know, the days of like having all these top tier sorties tanking everything is kind of behind us because of save skills, but Brave Marth still sticks out and he can omni tank really, really well. So yeah, he's one of the best sword infantry god swords in the game. And you know, his weapon gives him -1 cooldown, dragon effectiveness, no follow-up if the allies have greater than or equal to 10 buffs, all stats +5 if he's within 2 spaces of an ally or initiates, a +5 extra attack if allies have greater than or equal to 25 buffs, and 5 HP healing. So that helps him be really self-sustainable as a tank. And then he has Vantage if they're greater than or equal to 60 buffs. So those are his weapon. That's his weapon. A lot of effects built in, and you know, he improved over time, you know, since he's came out, but it's been about a year. He improved over time with the addition of Speed Smoke 4 and Bonus Doubler. Speed Smoke 4 is incredible on him. I use it on mine because it just helps him get even more damage reduction because he can get so damn fast. And Bonus Doubler, of course, is amazing on pretty much any Marth that wants to get buffed. I mean, every Marth wants to get buffed, so Bonus Doubler is great. And you know, he's pretty much the best user of distant pressure because of the consistent healing he can get in his weapon. Shining Emblem hits really hard, and it's an amazing support special because it buffs everybody for +6 on the team, no matter where they are on the map. They have to be obviously within 2 spaces at the start of turn for the +6 attack buff, but after that, once Marth triggers it, it doesn't matter where they are, they can just get buffed immediately, which is really good for support because, you know, obviously you generally want to buff all your allies to get them stronger. So Marth, because of that support ability, he can pretty much fit on any team composition. So he is really easy to fit on every team that you want, really. So just put him in on any team and he can work. So that's another strength of his. Another strength is that it's easy to trigger Shining Emblem because it's 2 cooldown, and with his weapon giving -1, and then you can have Time's Pulse, of course, to just pre-charge it. You know, Shining Emblem is really easy to trigger for the most part, and all the effects in the Genesis Falchion are easy to attain. Even though, you know, seeing 60 buffs, you're like, oh, that's a lot, but then you realize 3 allies, you buff them all once with 1 Shining Emblem proc, you're going to get the advantage in all the effects. So it's really easy to get Shining Emblem and all of its effects in Genesis Falchion. So yeah, and like I said, he's the only unit, really, one of the only sword inventories that can reliably omni-tank in a meta where save skills are so common. So for me in Aether Raids, he's my omni-tank. I do use save sometimes. I use Winter Marth to save, or like Black Knight to near save, but for the most part, I just use Brave Marth to tank everything, because he can. Especially with like Elamine and stuff, he can get so bulky, and the Vantage helps him. It's so clutch against a lot of tanks and stuff, because he doesn't have to take their hit. He can just Vantage them, and a lot of the time he's so strong that they will just die to the Vantage hit. And some people like to nitpick with the Vantage, and they'll say that the Vantage effect is not that great. But I don't like when people do that, because Vantage is very good. It used to be a very popular strategy, and you know, that's why it's so cool that Brave Marth can reliably Vantage and Omni Tank, 2 things that have kind of fallen out of style. Marth can still do. So the Vantage is still so clutch against a lot of, like, I don't know how many times it saved me in Aether Raids when I'm about to die, and I'm like, if I didn't have Vantage, I would have died for sure. Even though I have the damage reduction as a failsafe, you know, the damage reduction, sometimes I'll still die to like really strong units, or I'm too low to where the damage reduction doesn't even matter. But the Vantage will come in and just save my ass, and it's helped me so much that it's not helped me, because obviously you can Vantage into a unit with 1 cooldown and you might die to their special, which has happened before, but for the most part it's helped me more than it's not. And you can obviously run him with like Caden, which I run him with in light season, and have the guard effect, so you don't have to worry about dying to a special. So Brave Marth is very versatile. He can do so many things. Omni tank, he can excel in the player phase. He can run wind sweep in the B because he has no follow-up. And you'll notice a trend with the top tier sorties is pretty much everybody here has some kind of no follow-up effect, because that's pretty much one of the skills that you need to be top tier, is no follow-up in the sword infantry class. So Brave Marth has that, and he has pretty much everything you want in sword tank, pretty much everything, for the most part. So yeah, and that's a lot of the reasons why I think he's S+ tier, and I'm glad that people are starting to see that he's so damn good. And he pretty much carries me in every single, I use him in every single mode: arena, Aether Raids, forging bonds just to grind through everything, chain challenges. He's so good in pretty much every mode, and like I said, he can fit in every team. So I can't really talk, I can keep going on and on why Brave Marth's so good as a person who has him at +10 and has been using him since he came out. But here's some of the builds that I use on him. These are just some of them. This build, the Omni Tank build, of course, with Speed Smoke 4 and Bonus Silver, just giving him so much stats. You can run solos or like ideals with Wind Sweep, Tempest. You can run Gale Force, though Gale Force is a little harder on him because you have to run buffs on other allies so he can get the no follow-up and the other effects. But still, you can run units like Faye or Legendary Azura for that. You can also, of course, run Unity and Close Call that I like to use in Summer Duels. This build, this one at the bottom right here, is actually really funny because if you get this Vantage on the first turn, once you trigger Vantage and, you know, get even Tempest, because a lot of people don't expect him to just move in, you get Close Call, you move back so you can be within 2 spaces of an ally and get your Vantage. And then sometimes they'll have to surrender on the first turn because they just can't kill him through his Vantage, which is amazing. So those are just some of the builds. You can even run Vital Astra on him, but again, it's just like Gale Force, where you have to run other buffs so you can get the other effects. So yeah, those are some of the builds on Brave Marth. So I guess we can go over some of his weaknesses. I did touch upon it with the Vantage thing, so it can backfire on units that will trigger the special, but of course, for the most part, it's going to help you a lot. You know, because they might not even survive the Vantage hit because he can hit so hard. And of course, you can run Caden with the guard effect, so you don't have to worry about that. And another weakness, I guess, is sometimes the 2 spaces condition for his allies can be annoying because as a person who's done 1 turn abyssal clears with him, sometimes it's hard to get an ally up to him so he can get the plus $5 stats within the enemy phase, because if he's not within 2 spaces of an ally, he can't get Vantage. You have to keep that in mind. So the 2 space ally conditioning, even though it is easy to get for the most part, it sometimes can be annoying in certain strategies you're trying to do. So yeah, that's one thing about it. And then also, because he's so reliant on giving buffs to his allies, he is of course susceptible to panic. So, you know, you have to watch out for panic manners or any kind of panic smoke, stuff like that. But of course, you can run him with a Shira and just, you know, get rid of that completely. So he pretty much has an answer to everything, even though his weaknesses are there. You know, he has options. So, and then I guess the last weakness I can say about him is that he's weaker in other modes where there's not 3 allies. So like Voting Gauntlet. So if he doesn't have 3 allies, or if an ally dies, you know, he's not going to be as strong. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. But overall, Brave Marth, one of the best sword infantry units in the game, one of the best units in the game, one of the best brave heroes in the game. I can't stress enough about him, and I already talked about him enough. But that's Brave Marth, and I hope I'm glad that more people are starting to see how good he is. You know, I guess sometimes words aren't enough. You have to use him in battle to really see how good he is, especially when you have high merges on him. He's just incredible. So I just love that he can be an Omni tank and a Vantage God in a meta where those 2 strategies aren't as used as much. So Brave Marth bringing it back, and I love it. So that's Brave Marth. And yeah, so we'll move on to the next unit in the S+ tier, which is his brother, his other version, Legendary Marth. So Legendary Marth, I think, is S+ tier easily. As you guys know, Legendary Marth is pretty much the stat king. Nobody in the game can get as much stats as him. I think the unit that really gets close is now Brave Crom, with all his buffs that he can get, or the status buffs. But still, Legendary Marth in the infantry class is unmatched when it comes to having so many stats, because his weapon gives him dragon effectiveness, gives him an easy +8 to all his stats, bonus doubler on top of the unity effect. So he basically has Exalted Chaos Falchion just without the distant counter. And so because of this weapon and this insane weapon refine that he got, pretty much no matter what, whether he has a bonus or a penalty, he will always get extra stats no matter what. You know, unlike Brave Marth, who does have to be within 2 spaces of an ally to get his max stats, and of course he's susceptible to panic, but with Legendary Marth here, he's not as susceptible to panic. And like I said, he can get pretty much the highest in combat stats out of any unit in the game. So I think because of those, he's pretty much just an insane unit and easily S+ tier in the sword infantry tier list here. So yeah, his strengths, I already touched upon it a little bit, but another strength is that he can support his allies just like Brave Marth. But and also because he doesn't have the 2 spaces ally condition, he can actually be better. He can be a better Omni tank than Brave Marth in some scenarios, because you know, he can get more stats in some situations, even though his stat spread isn't as updated. He did come out in 2018. He's like one of the oldest ones here. But, you know, his weapon did bring him up to date. So, you know, he can be a better Omni tank than Brave Marth in some scenarios, because he did get access to Speed Smoke 4. Just like Brave Marth, he got better with Speed Smoke 4. So, because of that, I've used him in some 8th rates matches where I'm like, okay, Brave Marth might struggle here even with all this stuff. Legendary Marth will actually deal with it better, because he doesn't have to care about Menace's skills. Like, you know, like attack speed Menace Note is really common. Brave Marth counters her. A lot of units that can just attack him because Speed Smoke 4 is there, it makes him so good. I mean, obviously before that you can run him with Flame and stuff. But yeah, like I said, in some scenarios he can be a better Omni tank than Brave Marth, which is amazing. And he's pretty much like a hybrid between Brave Marth and Brave Alm in a sense, because of Binding Shield 2. So Binding Shield 2 not only lets him safely destroy pretty much any dragon unit, but it also lets him fire sweep any other unit if he has 5 or more speed. So that means he can fire sweep and wind sweep, kind of like Brave Alm can, for free. And, you know, Binding Shield doesn't have a recoil effect, which is really nice. And it's not a full no follow-up, but he basically has a no follow-up because he prevents the false follow-ups and also gives himself a guaranteed one. So that's another no follow-up effect. and you know, it's similar to Brave Olm where they can't counterattack, so he'd be able to safely poke and just break through save tanks. In Aether Raids, for example, there was a couple of matches where I fought, let's say, I think I fought near save +10 Brave Edelgard with far save Hector, and with Brave Marth, like mine does, that's +10 invested or just highly invested, you can just break through those save ball tanks and any kind of armor really, because he can safely poke them and there's no way that they're going to have more speed than him. So obviously he doesn't have the true damage like Brave Olm, but still he can excel in the player phase, even more so in the player phase than he can in the enemy phase, even though he can also excel in the enemy phase really well. So like I said, I think he's like a hybrid between Brave Olm and Brave Marth in a sense. So those are his strengths, and he's just really good. He's basically a delete button that can work in both phases. So yeah, but let's go over his weaknesses. So his weaknesses is that Shining Emblem is a bit harder to trigger than Brave Marth because he doesn't have -1 cooldown on his weapon, which kind of sucks, so that can be annoying to trigger Shining Emblem. But his weapon isn't as reliant on Shining Emblem to proc compared to Brave Marth, so that's another thing. And then another weakness is, of course, is low skills make him a lot weaker. I mean, that can be said about any unit that's buffed up because low skills can cancel them. But especially for a unit like Brave Marth or Legendary Marth who need the buffs to function to their peak, you know, the low skills can be really annoying. So that can weaken Legendary Marth a lot. And of course, because he's a legendary hero, the fire status can limit his usage in some of the competitive modes because he can only be used in those seasons. So that can be kind of annoying. And like I said, he can't omni tank like Brave Marth, but he does need a lot more investment because Brave Marth has the skills right off the bat, and is really free to play friendly. So that's one thing. And then he also doesn't have innate damage reduction. Like I said, he does have Speed Smoke 4 access, but you have to get that skill to give it to him, or you have to give him, you know, support from Flame or like Niffle. So those are pretty much the weaknesses and strengths of Legendary Marth, but he is still S+ tier in my opinion. He's incredible, just having, you know, he's pretty much the only unit that can get +99 to all of his stats if you set it up correctly. Obviously, in a real match, you're not going to get that every single time, but still, even without that, you're going to get an easy +15 to 20 to 30 to 40 stats in his weapon. He just has it all. He has everything. He's got an answer. It's like Brave Marth. He's so versatile in both phases. Even though Brave Marth, I'd still say, is, you know, more tailored towards the enemy phase. In some scenarios, like I said, Legendary Marth can be better in the enemy phase. So yeah, and he has a lot of versatile skills you can run on him. You can run Unity, Bonus Doubler, Distant Stance, and Darts. You can also run Distant Pressure, but I don't like Distant Pressure on him because he does have an HP threshold in his weapon, and also you have to kill Brave Marth to his legendary version, which kind of makes me sad. But you can run Distant Pressure, I guess, and run Mystic Boost to heal and get rid of the recoil. But I prefer Distant Stance or Dart. I run Distant Stance on mine. You can run Ideal skills, which are good because you know, Bonus Doubler is tempting because he has Bonus Doubler in his weapon, and you can also run the Seal. But if you're against someone with a low skill, like I said earlier, you know, all those bonuses are stopped. So I like Ideal because Ideal can still give you the offenses even if you're not buffed up or your buffs get canceled. And you know, his best B skill, always keep Binding Shield 2. I would never remove it pretty much. That's what makes him so good in the player phase and just lets him attack for free. And then his best C skills, because he does have -1 cooldown, just run Times Pulse. It's similar to Brave Olm. But you can also run Joint Drive skills, Speed Smoke 4, obviously. Those are the best C skills in my opinion. And then, you know, Sacred Seals, Flashing Blade, Form skills, or Bonus Doubler, or Mystic Boost. So yeah, that's an overview of Legendary Marth. And I do, like I said, I love that he's basically a hybrid between these two. So I love how they made his refine. So yeah, that is my boy Legendary Marth. Okay, so the next Sword Infantry unit in the S+ tier is going to be Ascended Mareeta. So this shouldn't be a surprise to most people. Ascended Mareeta is one of the newest God Swords, and she's an incredible unit. She's pretty much the best user of Vital Astra, which we'll get into. But, you know, Ascended Mareeta, she comes with a pretty similar stat spread to Brave Marth. She comes with 43 base HP, 40 attack, 43 speed, 34 defense, and 25 resistance. And her weapon gives her -1 cooldown, the standard +5 stats, no follow-up, Quicken Pulse, and Mini Special Spiral after combat. So all these effects are locked to an easy and lenient HP condition, so that's a plus for her because she doesn't have to worry about being within 2 spaces, unlike Brave Marth here, who has to be within 2 spaces to get his Vantage and stuff like that. So for Mareeta here, she can just easily go farther away from the team and not have to worry about that as much. She just has to be alive essentially because the 25% health condition is really easy to get. So that is really good for her. And her strengths mainly lie in the fact of her weapon, Ascending Blade, giving her all the cooldown effects. So because of all the cooldown effects, the Quick Impulse, the -1 cooldown, this mini special spiral, it lets her basically be, like I said, the best user of Vital Astra, which makes sense because she did introduce a skill, but also makes her the best Gale Force unit and the most consistent one. So, you know, because of all the effects in her weapon, she doesn't have to run Times Pulse compared to Brave Alm and Brave Marth and Legendary Marth. So she doesn't have to run Times Pulse. She can use other C skills. So that is really good. And because of her weapon giving her the cooldown effects, her Vital Astra will always pretty much be ready at all times after combat and before combat. So that is really good. And Vital Astra, of course, is great with her damage reduction in her Spurn skill, and then she can also stack it with Speed Smoke 4. So she's an amazing Omni tank and an amazing Gale Force unit, and kind of separates herself from the other three in this tier because, like I said, she's the most consistent Gale Force user. So that is really good. And you know, she does have a lot of stuff, but I also feel like she's also the most straightforward unit, Omni tank, and just a good special abuser. So those are the strengths of Ascended Mareeta, amazing unit, and her weaknesses. So her weaknesses, I guess I say weaknesses, but I guess like flaws compared to the other units too. You can also label it like that. But her weaknesses here, I only have like 2 of them. So basically the first one is that she isn't able to support her allies like the Marth, so she doesn't have something like Shining Emblem. So that is one thing to keep in mind. So she's kind of, you know, she needs the support if you want to buff her up and stuff. And also she does not have Dragon Effectiveness compared to the other 3. So, you know, that is actually important because it can help the other units in matchups against the meta dragons. So units like Ascended Dune, Regular Dune, Halloween Myr, Fallen Rhea, you know, Brave Marth and Legendary Marth, the other Marths and Alm are going to have a easier time than Ascended Mareeta because of the Dragon Effectiveness. So that can go a long way against a lot of bulky units. So Mareeta can struggle sometimes against those meta dragons, but still, even without the Dragon Effectiveness, she's still great, of course. And those are pretty much it. So, you know, best specials on her, Vital Astra and Gale Force. Like I said, she's the best user of both of those skills, in my opinion, in the Sword Infantry class. You can run Distant Dart, her native Solo 4, her B skill, Native Spurn. You can run Null Seed Disrupt, Wind Sweep. Pretty much the same skills that Brave Marth can run, because they're actually similar in a lot of ways. And then she can also run Wings of Mercy if she wants to, you know, help her Gale Force allies or just allies that are into the team, and she can just swing in and easily trigger Gale Force because of her cooldown effects and just run Flashing Blade and stuff. So she's a very consistent Gale Force user, like I keep saying. And then her C skills, because she doesn't have to really run Times Pulse, she can afford to run Speed Smoke 4 without much of an opportunity cost, and or keep her even Tempest or just joint drives and stuff. So she's very versatile, just like Brave Marth. And another reason why she's similar to Brave Marth is because not only can she Omni tank like Brave Marth, but also she can become a premier Vantage Sweeper because of the -1 mini special spiral after combat. So if you want to do the special spiral Vantage build on Brave Marth, you can do that. You can also do it with the Mareeta. So Marth here, he just has to run it in the B slot, the special spiral, and he can just instantly trigger off Shining Emblems with the Vantage once it's set up. With the Mareeta, she just has to run Vantage in B, and she can loop Vital Astra and continuously counterattack when she gets hit, and counterattack first. So that is really cool, and I like how they both can run Vantage builds and they both can Omni tank. So that's really cool, and they're both similar in that sense. So that's pretty funny. And of course, you know, Vantage sweeping with the damage reduction as a failsafe in case they don't kill is really nice. And for Mareeta, you know, she can run Speed Smoke 4 just like Brave Marth can. So that is really awesome. And of course, you can pair them up. I forgot to mention it when I was talking about Brave Marth, but Brave Marth pairs really well with units like Muspel because he can get true damage and even more damage on his Vantage hits. So Ascended Mareeta can pretty much do the same thing in that aspect. So yeah, that is the strengths and weaknesses of Ascended Mareeta. She's very good, and I feel like she's the most straightforward out of the 4 here, or the 3 that I mentioned before her. So that is Ascended Mareeta, very good unit. And then we have one more unit that I'm going to put in the S+ tier, and that is going to be Young Ike. So this might be controversial to some people. Some people might not see him as S+ tier. I definitely think he is, and I'm going to go into why. So his stat spread has 43 HP, 42 attack, 42 speed, 32 defense, and 26 resistance, and he comes with a sturdy war sword, and this weapon lives up to the name because it definitely makes him really sturdy. It gives him plus $5 stats, and lots of effects for an easy within 4 spaces of an ally condition, or allies within 4 spaces of him, should I say. So that is really easy to get because 4 spaces is huge in a game like FEH. And so how they work is if he has one or more allies within 4 spaces, he gets special cooldown count X, X equaling to 50% of units max cooldown value rounded down. So this will help him trigger special and his Radiant Ether really easily. So kind of similar to what we saw with Brave Tiki this year, you know, having the special cooldown charges or getting the special cooldown reduced before the first hit. So that's really nice. And then also if he has 2 or more allies within 4 spaces, he gets damage reduction from the foe's first attack by X% and X equaling to the unit's max special cooldown times 10. So Radiant Ether's 4 cooldown, that's going to be 40% off the bat without any kind of speed check. So that's really good. So very easy condition there. And then the last condition is no follow-up, of course, if he has 3 or more allies within 4 spaces. So Sturdy War Sword is amazing, and it's synergistic perfectly with his Radiant Ether special, because his weapon allows him to reduce his cooldown before his first attack, and it's perfect for stuff like breath skills, which will allow him to even more reliably proc Radiant Ether for lots of damage and healing. So he has to self-sustain just like Brave Marth, and he doesn't have to run Mystic Boost or anything because he has it in his special. He just has to proc it, which is pretty easy for him. And you know, with on top of the damage reduction and the no follow-up, he can be an incredibly bulky unit. Like, I've had trouble fighting him, actually. Like, I fought a couple plus 10 ones in summer duels, and Brave Marth can't do anything to him. Legendary Marth can't even do anything to him, even with the Fire Sweep and Binding Shield too, because he just gets so bulky, having damage reduction, no follow-up. And, you know, if you attack him, he's probably going to trigger Radiant Ether and hit really hard. So, Young Ike is no joke. And, you know, especially in modes like summer duels, especially on certain maps, he can be incredible frontliner because, you know, a lot of the times you're cramping your team together with like a far save tank. You can just place him in front and then have him deal with the melee units and then have the far save unit deal with the range matchup. So he doesn't have to run this encounter and stuff like that as much. So that's really good. And, you know, he's just an incredibly good unit. So those are the strengths of his. And then his weaknesses, I guess it's pretty much the fact that he can't really run other specials. Like, he's kind of locked to Radiant Ether. I mean, you can run other specials, but Radiant Ether is pretty much his best special. Not that it's a bad special, of course. It's just, you know, he doesn't really have much variety when it comes to his specials. I guess it's kind of similar to Legendary Marth, because you really want Shining Emblem for him to activate his weapon. So I wouldn't really run. I don't have Gale Force on mine or anything else. So kind of similar to Legendary Marth, I guess, with Young Ike being kind of locked to Radiant Ether, which is not a bad thing. But of course, you know, if you want to use something else, it's not quite as good as Radiant Ether. And he can't Gale Force as well, and that's another thing about him is, you know, he's not really as good in the player phase, because if he's going away from his allies, you know, that can be annoying. So he can't get all the effects in his weapon, but, you know, he's more of an enemy phase tank, I'd say, and he definitely excels at that role because he's incredibly bulky, especially at max investment. And then one other strength I forgot to mention is that the fact that he's a dual unit. So he has a dual skill that's really, really good, and it can cripple a lot of teams, especially in summer duels, just debuffing all the foes and then also stopping their pre-charge specials with the guard effect. So that's really good, especially in summer duels where pre-charge specials are everywhere and buffs are everywhere, and you can just weaken them really, really easily. And I've experienced it because, like I said, I fought some Young Ikes in summer duels and I completely forgot of his dual skill, and he just destroyed me and I just lose. So that is Young Ike, incredibly good unit. And again, I think some people might be sleeping on him because he is seasonal. He's the only seasonal unit out of the sword inventories in this tier. So some people are going to be kind of forgetting about him, but he's definitely really good and I think worthy of S+ tier. So, you know, he can use Distant Dart and Pressure. He can run Distant Stance 4. Or not Distant Stance 4. Stance 4s if you want to have the guard effect. You can run Ideal 4s. He has the Null Sea Disrupt. You can run Tempo, low attack speed. I think his low skill is actually his best one because those are the ones I got walled by. Because he has everything else he wants in his weapon. You know, he doesn't have to run no follow-up. He doesn't have to run Spurn because he already has damage reduction. But you can, of course, stack it with another Spurn in the B. And then, you know, best C skills pretty much with all the units here. Speed Smoke 4, Joint Drives. And then his sacred skills are pretty much the best ones are the form skills or like the breath skills. So that is the overview of Young Ike. Definitely S+ tier in my opinion. So yeah, these are the top 5 sword inventories in the game in my opinion. The undisputed top 5 swordies right now in the game. Obviously, if you're watching this later and they drop some new top tier swordie, then that might change. But of course, as of me making this video, these are the top 5 units in the game, sword infantry units in the game. You know, like I said earlier, they're not ranked within the tier, but if you had to ask me who I'm going to rank above the other, within this S plus tier. I think I'm going to put Brave Marth number 1. I know I am a little biased, but I think Brave Marth's just that good. He's so versatile, and he just fits on so many good teams, and what he can do is just incredible. I almost feel like sometimes words is not enough. Like I mentioned, words is not enough to describe how good he is. I feel like you have to see it to believe it, and you can definitely see it on my videos and on my channel and stuff. All the showcases I've had, I use him in arena a couple times, so Brave Marth is the truth. And if I had to pick number 2, I think it's Ascendant Mareeta, because she's a lot similar to Brave Marth in many ways. And then you have Legendary Marth, who is just the stat king. I put him at number 3, and then I would put Young Ike and then Brave Olm last. So Brave Olm, even though he's last, he's not bad. Of course, he's still amazing. It's just I don't think he's as versatile as the other units, obviously, because he's functioning mainly in the player phase. So I mean, Young Ike can't really function that well in the player phase either. I mean, he can, but not as well as these 3 who are good in both phases. So that would be the ranking of the top 5 sorties if I had to rank it within the tier. But I don't really like doing that because they all excel. It's just so hard because it's so competitive, you know. So I almost feel wrong ranking them within the tier, but again, I'm not really ranking them officially. It's just if I had to rank them on the spot like this is where I would rank them. So that is the S plus tier sword infantry units in the game. So let's go over the rest of the units and who's going to be in S tier next. So I'm going to put Winter Altina in S tier. She used to be one of the best, and it's kind of crazy to think that like a dual phase brave distant counter weapon isn't enough in the meta to be top 5 or top 5 sortie, but she's still really good, and she's a lot better than her mythic version in a lot of ways because she's infantry, and you know, she has access to a lot more skills. She has twin blades to help her in matchups because she's incredibly slow, so against a lot of sorties with damage reduction, you know, she can pierce through it with twin blades, and twin blades is a great special. So you know, stuff like breath skills is going to help her a lot, triggering it. And of course, a dual phase brave weapon is always good, so it can let her kill a lot of units really easily and tank a lot of units because she has a really good mixed bulk. So Winter Altina, I think, is definitely worthy of S tier. Next, I'm going to put Aira. Now, Aira, she was one of the top sorties at the beginning of the game, and then she fell off, and then she got the Refine, which is really insane. And it's funny about her Refine is it's one of the only weapons in the game that also has -1 cooldown and the attack speed +3 passive, because normally with weapons you either get the +3 attack boost or +3 to a stat, or you get -1 cooldown. You don't get both. With Aira here, she gets both, which is hilarious. So they really gave her a lot of stuff in her weapon refine, because it also gives her damage reduction, extra stats, and the null guard effect. And null guard is still pretty rare to have on a weapon, even though, you know, we have tempo skills now. That's still a rare skill, so having it built into your weapon is really, really good to just tank, to breakthrough tank, should I say. So Aira, I think, is definitely S tier in my opinion, and of course she can run Vile Astra now to improve her Regnal Astra, so that's really good. Next, I'm going to put Carla in the S tier. She had a Resplendent recently, so that really helps her. And I fought some really strong Carlas because, you know, she can run like everybody here. She can run Vile Astra, and Vassal's Blade gives her a lot of speed. The only problem with her weapon is it doesn't give her any bulk, so that kind of sucks. But like any extra defense or res, but still it gives her a lot of offenses, and it also gives her true damage, which is really good. And of course the -1 cooldown. So Carla is really, really good, and I think definitely S plus tier, or should I say S tier. Especially with the Resplendent boost that she got. So Carla, you know, pretty straightforward unit, standard, no follow-up, damage reduction tank that you can definitely run, or other builds in general, so that is really good. And then you have, next I'm going to put is Fallen Mareeta. Actually, might surprise some people, but her Refine is really, really good, because similar to Brave Olm, she's a player phase monster. You know, unlike all the other sorties here that are good in both phases, she's tailored towards the enemy or player phase. So having that dive bomb effect is really unique for a sword infantry unit, and also having the null guard so she can pierce through tanks really easily, and then also having a massive -8 attack, or should I say not attack, I can't talk, -8 speed or defense debuff on the foe, depending on her speed stat. So Fallen Mareeta is no joke. She's really, really strong in the player phase, and she can really function well as a Gale Force unit. So she's really good, and I feel like she's also kind of underrated, because I guess you don't see her as much, but you know, she's still really, really strong in my opinion as a player phase nuke, and makes herself unique in a pool of, you know, units that are just trying to run distant counter and stuff. So that's really good. And then next in the S tier, I'm going to put duo Erica and Ephraim. Similar to Young Ike in the case that they're both, you know, she's seasonal, so you don't see her as much, so she's very underrated, but her weapon is really, really good because it gives her -1 cooldown, the extra stats, and it also has true damage and healing. So the healing is really nice, just like Brave Marth. She can also self-sustain herself, and that's really good. So, and also the dual skill. So I forgot to mention with Altina, she has a harmonized skill to let her have Vantage, so that's really good. And you know, Erica here also has a dual skill of her own, so she has her own utility. And I guess the only thing that's really holding her back from being S+ tier is the fact that, you know, it's really competitive and she doesn't have anything that's like super duper standout, you know. So that's one thing about Dual Erica, but still a very, very good and underrated unit in my opinion, and definitely fitting here in the S tier. And then I'm going to put one more unit in the S tier, and that's going to be Young Mia. So Young Mia came on the same banner as Young Ike, and she has a really good weapon. Her weapon gives her -1 cooldown and the ability to have no follow-up and dodge at start of turn. Of course, this is stopped by Elamine and stuff, but you know, having that built into your weapon at the start of turn is really amazing because she can run low skills in the B and other skills like tempo, no C disrupt. So it frees up her B slot really, really easily because the B slot is very, very competitive. And you know, she also has the phantom speed effect, which is pretty unique to help her stop against wind sweep opponents or any kind of opponents that have a speed based check. So that's really cool, and it's, you know, it's still pretty similar to, you know, Dual Erica. The reason she's not S+ tier is because she doesn't have anything that really sets her apart compared to the top 5 here. So that's Young Mia, though, still really, really good sword infantry unit and pretty scary to fight if you don't have an answer to her. And I'm actually similar to Young Ike. I actually lost to one. It was like a speed defense ideal, just bulky frontliner Young Mia that had so much damage reduction with Vital Astra and Spurn, and it was just like impossible to kill her. So Young Mia is definitely a pretty nasty unit. She can be, definitely, despite her being a kid. So that is everybody in S tier, and then we'll move on to the A tier. First, I'm going to put Fallen Ike in here. You know, he is Ike, you know, the distant counter, pretty much the distant counter king. His weapon's very good. It has the chaos. Chaos, I can't even talk. The unity effect built in with this encounter, but you know, these days that's not enough. You need more effects, and he can run other effects in his A slot because he doesn't have to run this encounter, which is nice. So he can run stance skills or just stack unity like Legendary Marth can. But you know, that's pretty much it. That's all he's got going for him. He has the Mayhem Ether, of course, but he just needs a bit more. And maybe if he gets a weapon refine in like 2 or 3 years, that'd be nice for him. But I think he's definitely A tier. Some people might put him S. But I think I'd put him in A. So that's Fallen Ike. He kind of did fall from grace, so it fits his name. And then next, I'm going to put a Ryoma, another disencounter sword. Ryoma, he did get the Resplendent, so he definitely helps him a lot. And he was the original disencounter king, the original meta sword unit, along with Ike back in the day. So I'm still glad that Ryoma is still somewhat relevant, even though he's not like top of the top anymore. He's still pretty good at max investment. You have to invest into him, of course, but you know, having a disencounter weapon with no follow-up built in is really nice because all the other disencounter refines don't have no follow-up, and his has it. So that's pretty good. And of course, it frees up his A slot because he doesn't have to run disencounter in the A slot. So that is Ryoma. Next, I'm going to put Legendary Roy, another disencounter unit. He did get his remix and refine recently, which is pretty good, and it can help him you know, deal with guard effects and stuff and help him trigger his special really easily. But he doesn't have no follow-up, and he's missing a lot of effects that the other top swords have, so it kind of holds him back. But he can be a really good like raid boss tank if you stack up you know, his bonuses and run bonus double seal. He can be a good tank because he doesn't have to run this counter in the A. Give him a stance skill or ideal, he can be really tanky. So high investment Legendary Roys are definitely not bad at all. So Legendary Roy, I think, is definitely A+ tier. And you know, his what is it called? Is it Human Virtue 2? Yeah, his remix is pretty good as well, so it helps him a lot, and I think he's definitely fitting here in the A tier. And then next, I'm going to put Lucina. Lucina, one of the older units, but Sealed Falchion is a really, really good refine, and she's also one of the better users of Distant Pressure. Not as good as Brave Marth in my opinion, but still pretty good for getting the Sealed Falchion effect, and she can just get a lot of stats and prevent the foe's follow-ups with Sealed Falchion, getting +10 attack, +10 speed, +10 defense, and all stats, and then preventing follow-ups. And you know, she has aged pretty well as a swordie, even though she's not the best. She's still pretty good if you do invest into her. And Sealed Falchion's a great refine, so that's Lucina. You can also put Mass Marth in here, but they're the same unit basically. Just Mass Marth's free to play. And then next, I'm going to put a unit people might not expect is Flavia. So Flavia is pretty underrated. You could put her in B tier, but I feel like she's unique because the Deadeye in her weapon. So she has Deadeye built into her weapon, which is very rare. I think she's like one of the only melee units with Deadeye in her weapon. She might be the only one, at least in the sword infantry class. She is. So Deadeye built into a melee unit is really, really unique. So that helps her a lot in piercing damage reduction, and she also has the charges in her weapon. So Lioness Blade's pretty good, but you know, it's not the greatest weapon. It doesn't have no follow-up. It doesn't have healing. It doesn't have all the other effects that a lot of the top sorties and the other tiers have. But still, Flavia is pretty underrated, mainly because, you know, she's not the most popular character, but in the sword infantry class, she can stand out, I guess, a little bit with the Deadeye effect, so that's good for her. So I put Flavia there just mainly because of the Deadeye effect. And then next, we're going to put male Byleth and female Byleth. So the weapon is a bit outdated, even though it does have no follow-up and no guard into it, which is great, and -1 cooldown. They don't have any stats in their weapon, so that doesn't really help their outdated stat spread, but, you know, that's still a really good effect, having no guard and no follow-up. So Byleths here, they can still hold their own. You know, they have access to Fire Astra now, so they're pretty good. They might get refines one day, so we'll have to see what that entails, but I'm going to put them in the A tier. And then next, I'm going to put Rutger, the guy who just recently got his refine. I'm really glad that he got a really stacked refine because, you know, I love Rutger. I like him a lot, and he's a carry in Binding Blade. He's pretty much one of the best units there, so I'm glad that he got a really good rep and refine, and now he's pretty much the best free-to-play Grail sortie, in my opinion, in terms of combat. So his weapon, you know, gives him the special cooldown charges, and it also gives him stats to boost him up to the modern swords and damage reduction, which is really good because he doesn't have to run Spurn in the B slot, so that really opens up his options. And I guess the one thing that I had nitpick with his refine, this is kind of not related, but I wish he had Deadeye like Flavia, because, you know, his nickname is Critger, so I was kind of hoping Deadeye to, you know, emulate the fact that he's getting critical hits to kill people, but they gave him the special charges, which honestly is still pretty good as well, but I would have taken the Deadeye effect as well. I think that would have been more fitting for his personality. So yeah, I think Rutger's A tier. And then 2 more units we're going to put in here. We're going to put a Brave Celica. Brave Celica, I feel like, is another underrated sword unit. I mean, a lot of units are here are going to be underrated because this class type is so competitive. But Brave Celica, double Lion is pretty good, just being able to Brave. Even though the B slot is very competitive, it still can be useful. And, you know, she can get double Lion keep into that range because of her weapon refine having the healing. And she also has many special spirals similar to Spd Mareeta. So obviously she can't hit as hard as Spd Mareeta, and she can't loop her special as easily, but that is the thing for her, and I feel like Brave Celica is a little bit underrated. You know, I guess even if you look at her as a kind of like a bootleg version to Spd Mareeta, she's still pretty good. You know, at max investment and high investment. So kind of a sleeper unit, but again, she's not the best, but still pretty solid. And then the last unit here I'm going to put is regular Mareeta. So Mareeta pretty much started the trend of like God Swords back in the day with Disencounter and Spurn and stuff. She introduced, I think she comes with Close Call. So, you know, she's come a long way since then, and obviously she's not the best anymore in terms of Omni tanks, but she's still pretty good. You know, even though her weapon's very basic, just giving her +4 to all stats, -1 cooldown, and then no follow-up, it still works if you do have her at +10. And, you know, she's not as good as her other versions, but still pretty good. And that's the A tier. And then the last units I'm going to put in the B tier are all these guys at the bottom. So Yen Fei, I'm going to start with him because some people might be like, how did you put Yen Fei in B? Because he's always in arena. I always see him. Yeah, he's a great merge project, but his main strength is the fact that he's just good for arena scoring. Rutger is a better unit in general in terms of combat because his weapon's better than Carnage Amatsu in my opinion. Because this is kind of weapon, it's great. It has the damage reduction, which is great, but that's it. He doesn't have anything else, and he's pretty much, because of his weapon, he's pretty much stuck to that role, so he cannot excel in the player phase. So, you know, he's kind of a one-trick pony, and a lot of the time you see, you know, Yen Fei with Kestrel Stance, that skill's not going to help him in the player phase. Obviously, you can run like solo forwards and stuff, but even then, he's not the best unit in the player phase. So, he's pretty much stuck to that distant counter role, and compared to Rutger in the free-to-play pool, Rutger just functions better in both phases, but, you know, Yen Fei does have the amazing BST, so he's great for arena, but that's pretty much his main strength, and, you know, the flaws that I mentioned, that's the reason I put him in B. So I'm putting Yen Fei here in the B tier, and then next I'm going to put Larce. You could argue she can even be C tier if I put another one, but Larce also came with Mareeta. I think they were both pretty similar, like distance on the banners around that time. She was also one of the best sword infantry units, but now, you know, her weapon's not the best. It requires a speed check, but it does stop people's buffs, which is nice, but she doesn't have anything else going for her really in her weapon. So that's one thing about Lartse, but she can be solid still, of course. Everyone here can be solid. And then next I'm going to put Male Chris, and similar to Mareeta, when he came out, he was one of the best sword infantries, but now, you know, his weapon having the penalty neutralization and the -1 cooldown is not enough in these days. You need no follow-up, you need some damage reduction built in, or you need some healing, some more effects for Chris. If he had more, then he'd be better, but you know, he doesn't really hold up as well as he used to be. I mean, you could argue, you could put him here, but I just don't think he's as stacked as the other units in A tier, because he doesn't have this encounter, he doesn't have as much stats, he doesn't have Deadeye, he doesn't have no follow-up, he doesn't have no guards, so I think I'm going to put Chris here in the B tier. And then next, I'm going to put Malice, because Malice is one of the newer past gen sorties, but her weapon's not the greatest. You know, it gives her the null guard, which is nice, but it -1 cooldown and stats, and that's pretty much it. So she doesn't really have anything to stick out amongst the competition. And then Laszlo, some people might be surprised that Laszlo's here. People are like, why is Laszlo on this tier list? Well, if you're asking that, you might be sleeping on him, because he's actually pretty underrated, because he has a weapon refine that gives him the brave hits, and the brave hits are pretty good. So if you've seen the destruction from the Three Houses Summer banner having full might brave weapons, that's incredibly broken, honestly, and incredibly strong. And Laszlo here can kind of be like a free-to-play Altina in a sense, because he has a brave weapon that's very easy to trigger as long as he has allies with buffs. So he can hit pretty hard, and he'll probably get a Resplendent one day, so that's going to help him a lot too. So Laszlo, I feel like, is underrated, and he's like the only unit here in the 3 or 4 star pool that's like free to play, besides obviously the Grail units. But Laszlo is pretty underrated in my opinion, because of his brave weapon that can function in both phases. So you have to keep in mind his weapon's pretty strong if you can set it up, and it's pretty easy to set up. So I just wanted to put Laszlo here. So, because if you guys didn't know, check his weapon refine. It's pretty good and pretty underrated, even though you don't see him that much, because obviously it's a very competitive class type. But he can function very well as a brave weapon user. And then lastly is my boy Young Marth. And funny story about Young Marth is back in 2020, he was the best Marth actually. There was a period of time where Young Marth was the best. I was using him in every mode, but obviously his older versions, and Brave Marth wasn't even a thing back then yet. And Legendary Marth was still waiting for his refine, and obviously when he did get his refine, his older versions now give him the competition. So I'm comfortably putting him in B tier. Some people might put him higher because of his dual effectiveness in the rapier, but that's not enough these days. He does have Vantage, but he doesn't get any extra stats or anything. So we'll have to see if he ever gets a weapon refine, if that will help him a lot. I hope it does, because I don't use him much anymore because his other sword inventories are just better. But he does have that niche, having, you know, he can also Vantage sweep like Brave Marth, having dual effectiveness. Young Marth's still pretty solid, but you know, nothing too special these days. But yeah, so that is my tier list. I know this video is pretty long. If you watch this video all the way to the end, props to you, because you listened to me ramble this entire time. But I hope you enjoyed me kind of breaking down these units, especially the top 5, because I went the most in depth with them, and those are the top 5 sword infantry units in the game in my opinion. And everyone else, those are the rankings I made. So yeah, that's the video, guys. If you want to make your own tier list, you can. I'm going to leave this link down in the description. Follow me on Twitter, by the way. There's my Twitter. I talk about FEH a lot and just gaming in general, and I do like to make rankings. So if you enjoyed this ranking, again, leave a like, and you know, if you disagree, please be civil in the comments and let me know who you would put higher or lower, or who would you rank even within the tiers if you wanted to do that, or what other sword infantries that you would include that I left out. So yeah, that is the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble as always. Leave a like and comment. I appreciate all the support, guys. Please stay safe out there, and peace out.